Hope everybody's doing well tonight. My name's Adam from Firehouse Training and the Fire Mitigation Alliance. Really excited to have you all here tonight for our our certificate program on Emergency Operations Center and Incident Command Systems. The beautiful thing about our session here tonight is we have the opportunity through the Fire Mitigation Alliance and our various partners to share content to individuals around the world. So it doesn't matter what your background is, whether it's the fire service, public safety, private industry, community emergency response. Having the ability now to have people from as far as Indonesia, Finland, Asia, the US, Canada, and different parts of Ontario is pretty cool opportunity for us to have this outreach through the Zoom platform, through social media, through email marketing, to get everybody involved together here tonight within this chat. So again, super excited to have you all here as we present this content. Also, another thing I just want to mention for anybody, if this is your first time joining a Fire Mitigation Alliance event, please turn on your camera if you can. Hopefully you're all wearing clothing here tonight, but please turn on your camera. We do like to have good group involvement. I only have a handful of slides tonight. Tonight's program is about you. It's about discussing various elements of incident command, emergency operations center logistics and use that would happen within your community, right? So when it comes down to that, we just want to make sure that everybody has an understanding of what happens when a particular event or emergency gets escalated in your community. And hopefully with the experience here from the various subject matter experts that we have, not just the instructor panel, but also those participating, that you'll all take some value from that. Again, super excited for you all to be here. I'm just going to introduce myself again. So I'm Adam. I am the owner of Firehouse Training. I am a part of the Fire Mitigation Alliance, which is a group of companies here in Ontario, Canada that provides value, services, and basically solutions to anybody within the fire service, public safety, and others as a conglomerate to help make the emergency services better and help make our communities safer. We do online training, in-person training, and other programs when it comes to specific training for fire departments to aspiring firefighters looking to get hired. So again, as you see the content here tonight, feel free to reach out to myself or any of the other partners as we present this content or you have further questions about the content. With that being said, if anybody here wants to put it in their calendars right now, Tom, who is the president of the Fire Mitigation Alliance, he'll give an introduction in a quick moment. And myself and others on the Alliance are putting together a in-person event in July. It's fire safety training evening specific for workplace safety training. It will be downtown Toronto. I will be providing details for that in the future. That will be in mid-July. We're going to have beverages, some food, and free fire safety training. Many companies will come to this event to get certification for fire extinguisher training and fire safety plan review. If you're an aspiring firefighter and you want to come and you want training in that as well, you are welcome to come. That will be mid-July. The date escapes me. We'll talk about that after. Anyway, Tom, want to introduce yourself? Tell everybody a bit about the Alliance.
Yeah, and I think that is the 12th, I think, and it also it's the built environment, so it's commercial workplace, but it also will be condo.
Yes, property
condo
managers.
people, condo boards, people that should be attending that as well, what to do, not to do, especially around EV battery
Yes.
storage and things like that in a condo or a commercial building. Yeah, I'm Tom Hawkett. I'm the sort of director lead on the Fire Mitigation Alliance. And Fire Mitigation Alliance is the group you see at the bottom of your screen: Dust and Solve, Amplicam, Fire Rain, Firehouse Training. We are all partners, and we're always looking for good complementary resources and players that can help with the greater cause of reducing, mitigating fires across the world, basically. And I guess you missed. There's quite a few people from the Middle East on the call as well, because I was doing the registrations here this week, and yeah, there's quite a contingent from the Middle East here today. So welcome. And just so you understand, the Mitigation Alliance is a group that we go out and do trade shows, get out and meet people at conferences, trade shows. Adam speaks a lot on a lot of expertise he's got. He's a firefighter at the city of Toronto, and he sees a lot of stuff in the city of Toronto that I can only live vicariously through because I'm not a firefighter. But I've learned. I don't know if I could be a firefighter, but I could.
Well, you live in the
I
West
could play
End,
one on
Tom.
TV now.
Yeah,
I think I could play one on
End.
TV.
You're in the West End of Toronto. It's pretty rough over there, isn't it? You'd see some stuff.
There you go. There you go. And so, anyways, we've done. This is the 5th of the webinars we've recorded since last fall, and they always go up within about 3 or 4 days. And there's 5 of them up there, and that will be as of next week. And log back in, check the events calendar on the website. That's where you'll see where we're going to be and where these things are on as well. So, anyways, I'll pass it on to Justin.
Justin.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Name's Justin Bruner, CEO and founder of Decisolve and part of the Fire Mitigation Alliance. At Decisolve, we have a training platform made to develop training scenarios for emergency services, helping to elevate, companies training, both in the private and public sector. And actually, I just wanted to jump in and make an announcement too. We are looking to pilot this summer with a fire department that wants to bring their training up to the next level and help us build out the next evolution of our AI training scenario platform that we're working on. So if anybody's interested, I'll throw my email in here, connect with me, and we can get chatting and seeing how we can partner together to make the next great platform here at Decisolve.
Appreciate it, brother. No, that would be great. What about yourself, Quincy? What brings you here tonight, my friend? Can you hear us?
I can, yeah. Thanks for letting me join in.
Sure.
My name is Quincy. I'm one of the co-founders of Fire Rain. We basically make water stick. Instead of firefighting foams or retardants, we make a gel product that is 100% certified, 100% plant-based. So thanks for letting me be here. This is my first one, so I've been trying to make it. So my schedule actually lined up, so I'm happy.
Yeah, you've always had a team member show up, so that's great. It's been great. You got more than one or two people on your team. That's great.
Good stuff. All right, everyone. So those are the partners that are involved in the Fire Mitigation Alliance that are bringing you the content here tonight. So we'll jump right in. For those that have just haven't been to our events before, ask questions, put your information in the chat about anything that you want to add to the discussion. Again, we have a lot of subject matter experts here. We have fire chiefs from around the world. We have first aid instructors. We have fire students. We have volunteer, veteran, and career firefighters. So HAZMAT technicians. So again, let's we'll get it moving here. So the content here tonight, EOC and Incident Command program, it all comes from the NFPA 1561 standard, where we want to showcase the different elements of not just the NFPA standard, but how we're going to use it. The Ontario Health and Safety Act, the NFPA, and other standards that are out there that provide us with the level of training. Of course, we have our provincial fire marshal guidelines, but that's just a snapshot compared to the experience that we have here in the chat. Many of you are probably familiar with the ICS 100, 200, 300 programs and similar systems. We all start off with that incident command, right? The grand poobah. It could be a fire chief. It could be a public safety manager, right? But when we're looking at different elements of it, the one thing that I find personally in taking all this training, I'm sure Greg Scott can speak to this from the military and others, we see a lot of generalism when it comes to who is involved in these different sectors of incident command, who is in an emergency operations center. You're looking at different elements. Safety is important. We see a safety officer. We see someone in charge of overall site safety. That is a position in its own. You look at operations. That is task-based response. Firefighters, police, EMS, all part of that operation to take your strategy and move that into tactics, such as putting the wet stuff on the red stuff or arresting the terrorist, right? That's all part of an operations level response. You look at finance. Who's going to fund this thing? Maybe sometimes, you think Tom Hawkett will come out of the woods and open up his wallet, but that's not going to be the case. The taxpayers pay for this, right? And where does the money come from? Do you have the financial backing to cover this event, whether it's a HAZMAT event, whether it's a tornado, it could be a large commercial fire, it could be a wildland fire. We need to think about how we're going to put all these things together and cover that cost. Of course, the planning that goes with it, heavy urban search and rescue from a collapse to bringing in heavy equipment, tools, staffing, and others to manage that incident. And that goes down with logistics. Where's that equipment coming from? We saw this many years ago in the Argo Mall collapse in Elliott Lake. So for those of you not familiar with Ontario, that's Northern Ontario, where it took them 16 to 24 hours to provide resources for that event. Now, they had amazing trained firefighters there, and I certainly won't throw shade at them and the other first responders, as well as the miners in that community that wanted to help. They wanted to crawl into that rubble to save the 2 people that had perished in that engineered mall collapse. What happened was they didn't have any heavy equipment on retainer, front-end loaders, excavators, all the logistics required to get that equipment there quickly, vac trucks to speak of. So when we look at the bigger picture, then we're getting into the medical branch and the other side of that response. We need to know how these things come together. Quincy, I might put you on the spot, my friend. What have you seen when dealing from a large scale perspective, government versus private sector, when looking at wildland fires and, of course, getting your equipment, your eco-gel out into use? How do you see that all come together from the different entities that might fall in line with an incident command plan or emergency operations conglomerate?
We find that the industry is exceptionally prepared and ready to offer assistance. The government seems to be more reactive, or they start to get ready right at the last minute of wildfire season. We're seeing a significant, over the last 2 weeks, increase in orders because everybody's panicking now. The fire's there. So
you're right. What about yourself, Greg Scott? Coming from that military background, did you see much coordination from an incident command or emergency operations perspective from the military to the civilian side? I know you've done both. Anything you want to speak of on some of the differences and maybe some of the rollouts of a large incident command event structure or even an EOC?
For the military stuff, like Adam said, my name is Greg Scott. I'm one of his instructors. Ex-military. I was in the military for 10 years. I've been in the fire service for 25. On the military aspect, it's kind of the same outline for the incident command position. You have your IC, operations planning, etc. It's just at a larger scale now, and resources are more available as opposed to a civilian EOC or incident command system. It's just a matter for us in the military to make phone calls. We're kind of our own world in itself. We have our own heavy equipment. We have our own police service, medics, fire, aircraft. So for us getting equipment across the country, it's just a matter of planning it in contact with certain people to move equipment. So it's a little different scale, and the funding has come from the governments within our own agency. So it's a little different as opposed to the civilian side. Like Adam was saying, you need heavy equipment. You just can't call up Toronto HUSAR and say, I need this. You have to go through the, your POC center in Toronto, contact the provincial emergency operations center. The chiefs have to go through their kind of chain of command. It's a long process. Like there was an incident just north of here in Barrie that Clearview required HUSAR to come up. It took 4 hours, for them to deploy. 2 trucks come up for a cave rescue. So, they've gone through their chain. They went through local fire, the first responders on scene. They called the outside agencies. Barrie responded. It was out of Barrie's scope. Then they brought in HUSAR from Toronto. But it's that huge timeline it takes into effect. Military, it still has a lot of planning involved, but it's easier than getting through the POC center. We don't have that process.
No, it makes sense. Sven Hubbard, if you're on the chat, there's so many people here, I can't even see if he's there, but I think he is. Sven, tell us a bit about the wildland events happening out west. How do you see that coordination happening with what we're seeing on the screen here? Your finance, logistics, your incident commanders all coming together to try to handle such a large event.
Yeah, we have out here, they have more command trailers. I don't know if you guys have like a task force crew out there, but we have a government agency that's called Task Force 2 out here.
Yeah.
So they'll automatically deploy to all large incidences, and they handle a lot of stuff. They'll just take it right over. And we already have AEMA, which is Alberta Emergency Management Association. So they handle a lot of stuff for us pretty fast. So like we'll have, Swan Hills just lit up last night. We were at the fire chief convention, and a bunch of guys left within 1 hour of Swan Hills having fire and possible evacuations. They had close to, I think, 13 or 14 different departments rolling that way. So,
Sven, do you have any knowledge of what happened like in Jasper, where National Parks has their own fire group, and then the provincial guys came in after? Do you know
so
how that unfolded?
yeah, so that's so everywhere in Canada, like Canada national parks all through Canada, like British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, right into Ontario. I don't know if you guys have it in Ontario, but out here, Alberta wildfire, we can go on wildfire maps from Alberta wildfire that are posting the size of the fires, what's happening with their activities, if they're being held out of control, extinguished, whatever. It's crazy. Canadian, like the Canadian forest area, so the
Parks.
government, yeah, Canada Parks is not required to report fires active.
Jeez.
So they do not have to report fires. So we'll not. We were on a fire in 24 last year in 24, and I looked to the north, and there was another fire going, and they're like, "Oh, that's in Parks Canada. It's not even on the radar. We don't know about it." So there are two different entities, like Alberta Wildfire, BC Wildfire, Saskatchewan Wildfire, and Canada Parks. They don't talk to each other.
Wow.
They're totally. So that's where Canada Parks knew about the wildfire in Jasper, didn't notify Alberta wildfire till too late, and then everything, as you saw, everyone saw in Canada, it unfolded too late.
Okay, so
Ontario has the same map here. I just pulled up my phone.
they?
They have the active map right now.
Yeah.
doesn't show Algonquin Park.
Yeah, I was
It
going to say
shows
there's
up
some
in
fires
northern-
going on right now in Ontario, right?
Yeah, up Kenora, Fort Francis, up in that
Yeah.
area.
So again, everyone, we got to think about why these EOCs get deployed, right? And a part of that, you're looking at politicians, first responders, public safety experts, and others that come together to help handle and manage these events. Sometimes they work out well, other times they do not. A lot of times they face public criticism. A lot of times they face criticism from their own services, right? Whether it's fire, police, or EMS. We've seen this in the hurricanes in Florida and in we've seen this in the wildfires in Hawaii and California. There is some serious finger pointing that typically takes part in these events. And the one thing I found through my training across Ontario, Northern Ontario, and I'm actually heading down to New York State this weekend to a big tech rescue conference just outside of the Oswego area. I see on my travels all of these consistencies, right? So we know that an EOC, an incident command structure, can be used for fires, for terrorism events, things like that. But we need to remember about the natural disasters, right? Your floods, tornadoes, wildfires, even a large industrial accident in a small community or industrial fire is a big deal. Think about chlorine release, right? Some type of railway disaster. You're looking at public health emergencies like COVID, right? Depending on which news station you're watching right now, it could be measles, right? Large scale events such as protests are a big thing. They're a big issue that we need to deal with, and they can rapidly escalate depending on the time or the day. Infrastructure failures, obviously power outages. What I've found is that depending on the resiliency, the communication efforts from a local fire chief, right, where it usually starts, a local police chief, how events are handled, such as a mass casualty event, we see from the ground up that if a situation isn't handled potentially as it should, it will be escalated either proactively or reactively. And I've seen it both ways. So again, tonight, we want to obviously keep positive and talk about, the good ways that we have seen the EOC be utilized. But other times it can be used in poor fashion. Justin, in your community, out near the lake there, where do you see the EOC coming together? And in what type of situations? The tornadoes, I believe, just like Goderich is a classic example south of you years ago. But where have you seen an opportunity within the risk in your community where that EOC is going to be kicked into high gear?
Personally, I haven't seen anything to date. I mean, knock on wood. with that, because it's not something that you want to happen. We just though went through training with rail
Good, good.
as with that, and getting all of the kind of the players on the same field, and seeing that first 5 minutes where it starts off as chaos and then everybody gets into their grooves, they get into their grooves with communication and the teams start to work together. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest things that I've seen and then heard of. The more that we're doing this, the more that we're practicing, but involving uh, everybody and working together so we know who to call, whether that be somebody local, like you said, for heavy equipment, right? Does somebody have a local gravel pit on standby that they can call, that they can get an excavator in or get a dozer in?
Huge.
Even farm equipment. I mean, we had that with the highways around here over the winter we had. The farming community came and helped blow out roads, right? Because the plows couldn't move the snow fast enough. So, what do you do? Who do you talk to? And the most important thing is, how can we do these things to practice to see where we lack that information and where we're going to need that information to have it on standby instead of panicking trying to find it.
The things that I think of here, I put this slide up here on fireground benchmarks. I use this same slide when I teach an industrial fire class, an incident command class, a high-rise class. There's a lot of consistencies here. And when you look at overall fire, smoke, and heat conditions, that decision as a community to have an offensive type reaction or to handle that event, or perhaps defensive or non-intervention, such as a rail car fire, where perhaps it's polymerizing a hazmat, which means it's going to explode, it's going to continue to burn until there's nothing left to burn. The ability to evacuate areas and have search teams, whether they're used in a primary or secondary fashion. Are you ventilating any particular buildings or areas where we can start to have people either shelter in place or leave those areas completely? So when you look at these tactics, these are tactical items. It can go well, it can not go well, but we need to not lose sight of what is happening on the ground as those behind us, politicians, are moving things forward to get equipment and processes in place. A quick example would be this. In Durham region a couple of years ago, there was a bad collapse and there was a trench rescue. Someone unfortunately perished. The city of Toronto's Hussar team responded to that. And some issues that took place included the fact that no vac trucks or heavy equipment was deployed, as well as a lack of proper radio communications because they were working on two different radio channels outside of the major city that tech team responded from, right? So these are the kind of little hiccups that we see. Communication, equipment, logistics, staffing is huge. Many times we've seen, whether it's the Lac-Mégantic railcar disaster to the retirement home deadly fire that also happened in the province of Quebec, where the fire chief decided to call in mutual aid after the fire got out of control. So remember, it also comes from the grassroots. I call it grassroots. Your boots on the ground, firefighter or first response decision making, going all the way up to a mayor getting up at 3 a.m. to help organize an EOC at the local council chambers to start making phone calls to get further logistics in place. Does anybody here have any experience in dealing with the EOC and just kind of seeing it all come together, whether it's late at night, early in the morning, natural disaster versus large commercial fire? I think I see a few names here. I think we see Eric Lucko here. I think he's from the Guelph area. We got Anthony Punko from out west. Anybody have any feedback on that?
What would be the best practices that you've seen in actually getting from a communication and chain of discussion? What works the best, and is that different based on size and scope of a problem or an issue, or is it tend to be related to hazmat versus something like flood or something?
I actually asked that question earlier. What are your thoughts? Oh, sorry, who was answering?
Greg. Usually the municipality has to declare a state of emergency before they stand up their EOCs.
Okay, good to know.
Once that's done, then they got to go through the province and stand up the EOC. and now you're getting into the CEOs,
Yeah.
the mayors. I know each municipality has like the chief clerk has a specific role, the fire chief does. Everybody has a task they have to complete. So it all depends on what it is.
Is it size? Is there a way it's looked at from a size perspective where you don't need to deal with the mayor until it gets to a certain size, or how does that work?
It all depends on your municipality. Like one
Okay.
individual said, they don't need it for their EOC. I know certain municipalities do, but I know we've dealt with it for exercise wise. Like we had a major fire, we had to stand up our EOC, notify the mayor, CEO, and the whole works. But it all depends on your municipality's bylaws.
But then it sounds a lot about planning and having it already figured out before it actually happens almost. So you know the
Well,
chain of command, so it's automatic.
most of your emergency managers in the counties, they run. You're required by law to run exercises once a year.
Good. Excellent.
I think Eric made a comment here. Of course, I lost it. Oh, you do not have to declare a stand up for your EOC. Okay, very good. So that must be community specific. Right? I mean, you look at the pandemic, you look at a terrorism event, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there's protests occurring right now. You look what happened in Vancouver. Right? Even last month, it's like you don't hear about these things after they happen. When over 10 people were killed in a domestic terrorism type event, right? It happened on home soil.
Yeah.
Where do we go from there? And I see that on the CBRNE side of things. We have the hazmat and then hazmat to hurt people. An intentional hazmat is called CBRNE. Chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive. We deal with those events every single week in our city. White powder calls, bomb threats, protests. But in a smaller community, maybe in Northern Ontario, that could be a big event where an EOC might have to stand up because they feel that would be a threat to their community. And again, remember, when I say that word, we need to remember, perception is reality. What might be a threat to the city of Toronto may not be a threat, vice versa, to Red Lake, Ontario, right? We see that in decision making from chiefs, emergency managers, police. Of course, we know police, may act differently in different communities based on relationships and based on the type of calls and call volume that they get. So I could definitely see a bit of a, I'm not going to say discrepancy, but a bit of an inconsistency there. When you look at some of the consistencies, you look on this slide here, allied agencies, your local police, your county fire coordinator, your medical office, Emergency Management Ontario. I've seen it both ways. I've seen Emergency Management Ontario get called for specific events where they end up being more of a call taker rather than that of a resource to help supply resources or to supply, a certain level of expertise. And I'm not throwing shade at EMO or the fire marshal's office or others. But remember, it all depends on who's on duty that night, who's sitting in the hot seat, who answers your call to take that call about a trench rescue, who takes that call about a large commercial fire where there might be multiple deaths. Do they contact the Ministry of Environment, CanUtech, and others that fall into a larger capacity to give you the resources that you need? A quick example would be the other day I was doing some training with an industrial facility in Sarnia. When we called CanUtech let us know that they would be calling the Ministry of Environment on our behalf to pass along information to handle that. I've never heard of that happening before. I always thought that was a separate call. CanUtech would also call Spills Action Center or vice versa. SAC would call CanUtech. So, there's this little behind the scenes relationships that you otherwise wouldn't know unless you make the call or you're live in that emergency. Greg, in your time, as a deputy chief years ago, how did you see any like little quirks like that where something would be specific to a small community and then completely different than that of what you're seeing in the military? Did anything kind of pop in your head when I mentioned, these little behind the scenes phone calls or other things that might be happening, like that might be specific within your community that you were a deputy in?
Especially dealing with the farms. Like we had an industrial accident on a farm,
Right.
and dealing with that, normally it's you would call the Ministry of Labor, but because farms are federally regulated, you have to call Labor Code of Canada to deal with.
Wow. Okay.
So like we never had. I said call the Ministry of Labor. Like nope, we call Labor Code of Canada because it's a farm. It's regulated by the government. So yeah, that was an interesting thing for myself, being as a municipal. The military is a little different because we don't really follow the Ministry of Labor or Labor Code of Canada. They do slightly, but
Yeah. Yeah.
they have their own kind of regulations and policies in place. Like we have our own safety divisions, we have our own flight safety stuff. So yeah, kind of dealing with that is a little slightly different than on a civilian side.
I see Chris Gilbert's comment there. Emergency declaration is typically tied to funding related. Interesting. So you can spin up your EOC for any particular emergency incident. And I get it, right? If you have a very proactive EOC that wants to, get things rolling to start moving processes forward faster, you can do that. In the fire department, we call that front loading the apparatus. There's no secret in the city of Toronto and Mississauga and other big departments, we're sending so many fire trucks. Sometimes it can be a little bit overbearing, right? We have so many staff on scene. But keep in mind, although we have a lot of staff responding, we are rather quick to downgrade the call based on what we have. And the reason that we send a lot of trucks at first, whether it's a mass casualty incident, a high rise, or commercial fire, we know that if it is an actual event, we need the staffing there ready to assist at a moment's notice. They can't be back in the fire hall having a sleep. I mean, having lunch. Sorry about that. You know what I mean? They need to be ready to go and deploy appropriately. That's why we send a lot of fire trucks. That's why you'll see, for example, many people might not know this. Some communities do this still since the Columbine incidents and other active shooters. Others do not. But in the event of a fire alarm from 9 to 3 p.m., typically most communities will send one police officer to help investigate a fire alarm along with the fire department if it takes place at a local school. That's part of their emergency management here. Can anyone tell me why? Why do we see that in some municipalities to this day?
Just in case of a possible active shooter.
That's just it. I've seen some communities do that, others do not, right? So again, when you're looking at how we manage specific emergencies, that's just the tip of the iceberg. What resource are you sending to begin the investigation or to decide to upgrade or downgrade that call? And every department's different on that. It really is. When it comes to social services, again, this is often overlooked. Hear me out. You have a high-rise event. You have a commercial property or individuals displaced in the community from a chlorine leak. Where do they go? I've been there when I've seen families outside of large high-rises not have a warm place to go because the incident commander forgot to call the local shelter or the local bus company to come and keep them warm. Do we have local hotels on standby to have rooms ready to go for families displaced? What about the local arena or community center? Is there resources there ready in case families need to go there for some type of catastrophe or some type of mass casualty event or even a health crisis? So when you look at things like community partners through social services, public health, school boards, Red Cross, the phone call needs to be made. I've seen families not have anything to eat after a fire, after an event, and they're sitting there on the side of the road because the manager at Tim Hortons heard about the event and came there with food. And not because the fire chief called, not because the police or the incident commander called. So these calls need to happen, right? Whether it's a second stage alarm, third stage alarm type fire, whether it's a mass casualty event and you have the EMS bus show up and the incident command vehicles, right? Some big cities like the city of Toronto have Rehab 1. Rehab 1 is a very, very famous vehicle. That's basically a bunch of porta potties on a truck. Firefighters and emergency responders need to go to the washroom during an emergency, and so do bystanders. So we pull up Rehab 1 to assist with that type of event, helping others. So again, these are things that we need to make calls on, and we need to move forward quickly so people literally and figuratively aren't left out in the cold. Sven, how do you guys handle some of your social services for your wildland out in your neck of the woods, out west? Any of these ring a bell or are similar to what you're doing in Western Canada?
Lots will be either hotels or they'll take over arenas.
Yes, great idea. Yep.
So it depends. Like if it's an evacuated, because we've had people where we evacuated a town and then the next town was on fire, so we evacuated that town, and then we just broke in. We used the keys to the city and got into the hotels and put the city that we were evacuating now in the city that was evacuated and release people back into that city as well. So it's very. They will take things like we've taken, as I said, hockey arenas, we've taken hotels, we've taken all the fire apparatus out of the fire halls. Like we took all the fire apparatuses out of the Yellowhead County Fire Hall, which had 11, it's an 11 apparatus bay hall, and we shoved everyone in there on cots.
You have to do what you have to do, right? At the end of the day, a lot of the fire halls will have generators and backup power as well. Most do. But there's a reason for that, not only just for the firefighters and general emergency response, but if the community, needs some type of place to go, right? At the end of the day, it is a public building. Again, just a quick reminder for anybody that has joined us halfway through, do put your email address in the chat. Justin will be taking attendance for your certificates. And again, if you can turn on your cameras to participate, that would be awesome too. Still have quite a few people with the cameras off. What Chris Gilbert say here? Shelters are tied into hotels and school board. Schools are typically the initial community shelters. It makes sense. However, I do want to combat that. I was at an event a few weeks ago in a community where they didn't want anybody from the public. This is going to sound crazy, but it's the truth. I said, why is the school locked? Because there was a community event on the outside of the school. People need to use the washroom. They said, no, the school is out of bounds for most events or most emergencies because they don't want the liability of anybody being in there if someone gets hurt in off school hours. That's the first time I've ever heard of that ever. Mm-hmm. We're at an event where there's a lightning and thunderstorm with tents, live music, and it was a community fundraising event, and no one could go inside of that school because of liability for people slip, tripping, and falling in the school. Wow. So again, when you see these things, you just wonder who the heck's making these decisions. Unfortunately, that was the case that day. And these are the silly things you run into. Suresh, what did Suresh say? I work for the airport and everything is tied down to the Aerodome emergency plan. We sign MOUs with all mutual aids. Yes. Heavy equipment, hospital shelters, fire and practice every 2 years in the form of a full-scale emergency exercise. Suresh, if I could ask you, my friend, in all honesty, how do they go? How do those emergency scenarios go when everything's pre-planned? Are they pretty straightforward? Is there sometimes some hiccups or delays? What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't always go as planned, but most of it, yes. But still, we have, after every exercise, we have a lot of points to be learned and lessons to be learned. And sometimes we may have to change or amend the emergency plan to, the real situation. So, yeah, for after every exercise, we do have a lot of learning points. And otherwise, basically, for an big event like this, all the mutual aids, they do participate wholeheartedly. And yeah, I mean, otherwise also they have already signed the MOUs with us. So most of them, they attend the exercise and everything goes as planned. Everyone is the emergency plan has the roles and responsibilities of all individual units. So they do what they're supposed to do.
No, I like that. Where are you from, Suresh? Where are you coming from tonight?
Yeah, I'm basically from India and now working in a Greenfield airport in Iraq.
Beautiful, brother. Oh, glad you can make it. What the heck time is it there? What time is it? It's 8:44 p.m. Eastern. What time is it there?
Yeah, it's about 3:44 in the early morning.
Excellent.
I'm getting sleepy thinking
Thank you
about
for
it.
joining us.
Glad you
Yeah,
can make it.
it's a pleasure. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Very cool. No, again, this is why we do this, everybody, to see people from across the world. You can share different experiences, and right, emergencies, you know, they're the same, but they're also different, right? Across the world, and we're learning from each other. So no, very, very, very cool. On to the next slide here, we're talking a bit about those other support services: electricity, gas, sewer, water, you know, rail companies. I'll tell you right now, simple fireground tactic that often gets missed. And I've also almost been hurt a few times, is I'm in there in a house fire and I'm pulling ceiling, I'm looking for fire extension, I'm, you know, throwing my axe and my halligan around, trying to put the wet stuff on the red stuff. And I realize I've been fighting this fire for 45 minutes to an hour and the hydro is still on. Then I start to smell this rotten egg smell, otherwise known as natural gas. And I notice the natural gas is still on. When you look at fundamentals of scene safety, we need to get electricity shut off. We need to get the gas shut off. We need to handle those utilities. And firefighters can do that, you know, other incident commanders. But when you look at a large scale, let's say it's a battery energy storage system fire, right? I do quite a bit of teaching for lithium ion battery fires, electric vehicles and whatnot. But I can't sit here and tell you that every municipality I've taught in knows exactly who to call for their the infrastructure lead when it comes to shutting down a local solar farm, a local battery energy storage system, a hydroelectric station. You have to get those phone numbers in advance and have an emergency plan to get things shut down immediately. I know sometimes when you call hydro or gas, they say a 45-minute response time or 1 hour response time. I understand that. But remember, sometimes you don't have that time. So you need to either pre-plan and understand where emergency shutoffs are in your community. You need to have not just one phone number for an infrastructure leader. You need 3, because I've been the one in dispatch many years ago contacting the local electrical company to send someone out, or contacting a landlord of a high rise saying, your building is on fire. We need someone to go there to show us where the utility room is to shut off the gas and hydro. And the wife says, oh, Mr., I'm sorry, Billy passed away 3 years ago. I said, Billy passed away? He's the one with the keys. I said, who has the keys now? They didn't know. The point I'm trying to make here is nobody updated our emergency plans, right? If someone is deceased and they can't make it, you need to have another backup plan. So again, these kind of things happen. I was in an event once where we had a HAZMAT situation. We called the local spill response company that used to be on retainer with us, and that spill response company went bankrupt a few years before. We didn't have a HAZMAT team to come and clean up that spill on the side of the 401 in Eastern Ontario. That's going to be a problem. Now we're just like everyone else going through the yellow pages. Oh, now I'm aging myself. Google, right? Google, you're on the internet for that now. And you look for these numbers and you call who you need. But by that point in time, it's probably too late. Maybe they're tied up on another job. So we need to think big and we need to have a plan in place. Quincy, when it comes to, I know you do a lot with the rail industry now, especially with your product EcoGel. When it comes to the infrastructure side, you deal with municipal departments, politicians, and now the rail industry. What is it like when you see all those entities come together when you're communicating a deployment of your EcoGel on a rail line infrastructure, for example? Is that easy for you? Do you have one call to make and expect everything else to be easier? Do you have to let the municipalities know too?
So our contractors in the area, they handle all that. They have mostly the local authorities and emergency agencies on call, and then say the department would notify the municipality. The first call is obviously to the rail provider, and then they go from there.
So so again, that infrastructure is already set up where the calls get made, and you can move that forward. Diligently, right?
That's the plan.
I love this slide that I made here. Again, this is a list of many that we've covered here tonight and many that we haven't. That mutual aid assistance, and that word mutual aid, calling local agencies for assistance. Automatic aid could be automatic dispatch of a neighboring community's ladder truck, automatic dispatch of a neighboring department's technical rescue team. Okay. So all those things fall under mutual aid or automatic aid. But off the list, again, we already talked about a few. What else do you think is important when it comes to mutual aid that we maybe really haven't covered here tonight?
Well, Adam, I was just thinking the session we did for the community, indigenous community east of west of town here, it was you were teaching police officers what to do in the EV, what to do and not to do in the case of an EV battery fire, say on a side of the highway or in a building. So you were teaching police officers to be ready and to work better with the firefighters. And also, I think you also did the same group. You did something about active shooter as well. And that was that for the police or was that for the fire people?
It was both for police. So hear me out. And I haven't talked to you in a while, Tom. We've been busy, so it's good to see you again. It's been a while. Get this, everybody. You look at something like a battery incident, electric vehicle or lithium-ion battery, fire, hybrid vehicle. Think about who all responds to this, because anyone that covers some type of hazmat, some type of event, they need some awareness level training. So we always think fire departments. You might think emergency managers, property managers dealing with these hazmats, these lithium-ion batteries, these e-bikes, these e-scooters, these electric vehicles. Now, what happens when they catch on fire? We know a roadside responder might show up in addition to the fire department, like a police officer, like EMS, right? I'll say the word ambulance driver, but I don't want to offend anybody here tonight. A paramedic, okay? A paramedic. Then think about the post-fire events, forensics, fire investigators, police investigators, evidence and custody, booking agents that bring evidence from a fire or an event into a police station, into a holding area. They don't understand those hazards. So I know we're talking mutual aid here. We're talking about that mutual aid assistance. But when you look at everyone that's involved in a certain incident, hazmat, a fire, a terrorism event, a pandemic, think about everybody that touches. And now everyone ask yourself right now, are they trained? Do they have an awareness of what needs to happen? Look at the bottom one there for decontamination considerations. Does the local hospital have the same decontamination training or process as the local fire department? Does the local fire department have the same level of decontamination training for the nuclear plant or chemical plants in their community? This is where I've had the chance through Firehouse training to see these gaps. And then, of course, we try to fill those gaps. But there's a lot of areas that are missed. I see that with Quincy when we promote his EcoGel product. I see that with Justin when we talk about using AI to run training scenarios. I don't build my own training scenarios anymore. I'll be the first to admit I don't have the time. So Justin does it for me. And again, like Tom with his Amplicam product for detecting wildfires. People don't understand the elements of what takes place in these large-scale emergencies and how to bridge those gaps with technology, with training in other areas that all fall into how this mutual aid assistance comes forward. Mutual aid can be a lack of trained personnel to run a rope rescue rigging, to run an ice water call, to operate an aerial truck to flow water from the top. Right? So you can look at simple events or you can get very technical. But I want everybody here to think tonight about how we take this mutual aid or these other groups that we might be working and involved with and try to get them up to speed on what we're doing. Chris just wrote, multi-agency trainings are important. Some municipalities never do them. Some do a ton. And every municipality is different. You could be Northern Ontario rural community. You could be an Indigenous reserve. You could be one of the biggest cities in the country. But if you don't all practice playing together nicely in the sandbox, then don't expect to play nice in the sandbox on game day. And we've seen that. Quincy, I might go back to you. You've traveled across the world, promoting EcoGel. What have you seen that was working when it came to good communication between agencies, whether it was Europe, whether it was Canada? What did you find really worked well out there for these large scale events, such as dealing with wildfires?
So I was just in California last week, so that's pretty timely. And getting the appropriate people in the same room, I think Chris just mentioned, just multi-agency trainings, drills, or just get to know each other. Just get a group in the room and start talking. The ones that practiced and played together, and when it was game day, like you said, it goes smoothly, and you can see it. And then I've been at mutual aids calls as a firefighter, and we don't work with a certain department, years ago, whatever, chief relations, whatever, it never went right. And then it doesn't take long to start getting everybody together, and then everything moves smoothly when it's game day.
For sure. And that's a good segue, because we go into the emergency planning side of things, right? The Ontario government, other governments have emergency plans for everything from hazmat to dam failures, droughts, thunderstorms, oil and gas events. But the big issue that I see personally as a boots on the ground firefighter, a boots on the ground hazmat, CBR&E technician, is a lot of times those plans don't get passed down to the boots on the ground. And I've been there, right? New Year's Eve celebrations. We have had multiple injuries in a downtown core. Where was our EMS staged? Where was our fire command center staged? Where was law enforcement staged? Were they using proper call signs? Were they using proper egress and evacuation routes to get ambulances in and out? The same thing goes now with rock concerts, right? We think of events like Taylor Swift that happened, where millions of people congregated the downtown core, the upcoming FIFA events coming to North America. Big football games. A lot of my hazmat technician friends down in the Texas area, where football's huge, and in southern US, the planning that goes into a high school football game for many of us would blow your mind. Hazardous materials reconnaissance, heavy security, armed artillery ready to go from local law enforcement or emergency response ERT teams, like some type of response team. So, you take something like a concert, you take a tornado, you take a landslide, you take an oil and gas, commercial fire, and you really need to break down, is your local emergency services trained to deal with that? And are the plans in place so everyone else understands what their role is? Again, these are low volume, high acuity calls. These events don't happen all the time, but you need to have a game plan in place. Some of the best fire chiefs I've worked with when I did some work as a field incident technician, AKA a chief's driver, were the ones that carried a checklist. They'd have an incident command checklist. They'd have an emergency planning checklist. They'd have a checklist for a trench rescue, a hazmat call, a fire, to a car accident. And they wouldn't skip a beat. So again, for the emergency managers in the room, I know you all have checklists, either community checklists or provincial checklists for all these events that you see on screen. But we need to understand how they come together to make progress to mitigate an emergency. That's what it's about. It's about mitigating an emergency. The last slide I want to talk about here is just those roles and responsibilities. Again, every department's different. You have your local level, incident response, local management, coordination of first responders. That's firefighters, police, EMS, emergency managers. The provincial level, calling for resources. Are they documenting what they need, or documenting what you have going on? Are they sending you what you need? And do they have the relationships to call out the HUSAR teams, the tech rescue teams, and the hazmat teams? And then, of course, the federal level. No matter what side of the aisle you sit on these days, especially in today's political climate, we know that there's money that needs to be spent to help support the province and the local levels. And how do they do that? You could have things in the US like FEMA, right? Federal Emergency Management. So where that money gets spent, how it is utilized, now that's still up for debate, again, depending on what side of politics you're on. But we know that you as a first responder, you from a local level, provincial level, need to have a better understanding that when those emergencies happen, where your resources are coming from, staffing, equipment, and even the funding side. Right now in the US, they're seeing massive funding cuts due to the current administration. Training, lack of the outreach or availability for those crews to get out where they need to be deployed properly and effectively. So when you see these things and you know you might have to make adjustments or shift things on the fly like they have to there, you can't just say no one's coming to save you, no one's coming to help with this event. You need further plans, further investigation on what you're going to do. That comes down to that provincial emergency management. Who are you calling, right? Your provincial, your state. Is it managed 24/7? What resources for the emergency managers in the room do you get from a local emergency manager? Do you find that it is local, that it is typically a documentation type of event and then resources are pooled after? Or will you call your local state or province and get resources sent to you immediately? I think about the US. The FBI must respond in the US to any HAZMAT or CBRNE event within 2 hours of a call out. Then you have your CST teams, your civil support teams. Then you have your search and rescue or heavy urban search and rescue teams. Then you have your National Guard, your military. There's many different state levels that will be dispatched for a large scale local community event just by a phone call. So I've had the chance during some of the HAZMAT conferences I've attended to take training classes with the FBI to learn about how they do emergency management in the US. And the one thing I can say, whether it's the funding or the amount of people, they have a lot of resources available to them quickly. Now, how they all work together, that's still up for debate when it comes to playing nice in the sandbox. But I do know that that's deployed. If you look at a city the size of Toronto or Mississauga, many times they try to handle everything in-house. They may not open up an EOC as fast as a smaller community because all the resources are in their backyard. Again, there's a lot to chew on tonight, right? When we talk about these different elements, and hopefully, tonight you're able to see the different ways that we can come together and just try to find solutions or provide solutions to some of these problems that we might, see as a community.
I've seen you do some scenario-based stuff where you do a lot of role play sort of. I know with Justin's stuff, he's able to create what if scenarios and play out scenario-based training. Maybe expand a little bit on that.
Well, while we do that, the next slide before I was cutting things off was a scenario.
There you go.
So we'll finish up with this slide then. Good segue, Tom. I'm hungry. I got to get some food here. It's been a long day. So here's what happened. Here, think about any community, large or small. I had the chance to train at an Indigenous reserve a few weeks ago, and they had a water treatment plant on their facility. Something like this, a chlorine leak, could be a HAZMAT operations type level response, which could also open up the community to a bigger situation than originally they had anticipated. You're setting up an incident command structure. You're setting up an incident safety perimeter. If there's a large evacuation area based on our, oh goodness, I got so many books here. ERG books, our CDC NIOSH guides, our Occupational Health and Safety Act, the Green Health and Safety Bible, we call it. All that information available to you, we know that we need to work on figuring out how we're going to handle this event by doing air monitoring, by evacuating individuals, possibly setting up a water supply with the local fire department to disperse vapors if we can. But Adam, it's a chlorine leak. Why would you possibly put water on chlorine? It's going to turn into a hydrochloric acid. Maybe it will. But that's the decision that you need to make as an emergency manager or incident commander to either put water on that bad stuff and bring it down to the ground and clean up the HAZMAT spill later, or allow that vapor to go into the community and potentially injure or kill people. So these are the things we talk about, especially my HAZMAT training and other events, where you take a scenario and it's about critical thinking and decision-making based on what you have at the time. Do you have water hoses or fire hoses to handle an event like that? Do you have ventilation fans? Do you have bullhorns or a radio to communicate to evacuate the community or local buildings? So when you think of a chlorine leak, you think of a wildfire, you think of a tornado. You have to make those decisions. And as always, based on priorities, life safety being number one, mitigating the emergency number two, and then conserving the environment and saving property as number three. If you keep that in mind, typically as an incident commander, you'll always make the right decision. But you have to look at what you're dealing with and who is all involved. The public, first responders, could be children, could be a local hospital, could be a local, orphanage to a community center. Your decision making will all come down to what you're dealing with and who is affected. Chris, you got a question, my friend? Chris from Vital Signs. How are you? Oh, he's just waving at me.
No, I didn't have anything. I was just sort of,
Yeah.
I just thought it was just sort of something you had said earlier, talking about the schools and stuff like that, and the absurd, litigious paranoia that goes along with them, and the, not being able to, I mean, even going into schools all the time, one of the problems that we run into just from like an education standpoint is sometimes we're not allowed to enter into different sections of the school, and things like that on a varying day and all that sort of stuff. It's always a challenge with those types of things, and especially, and I don't know if in sort of smaller communities people deal with the same thing, but with large bureaucratic organizations we deal with this overarching bureaucracy and excessive, it's just sort of, it's paranoia from, litigation. And I guess once you get to a point where you have a large enough organization, that becomes a bigger problem than serving the community better in some ways, which is unfortunate. And I wish there were better ways around it, but I'm sure in incident response, you run into a similar sort of problem there.
No, great point, Chris. And I'll touch on that before we finish up. Again, just a reminder, everybody, put your name in the chat, your name and email address if you want a certificate for this training. Chris brings up a good point. I see a lack of decision-making from emergency managers and incident commanders because of the litigious nature of today's society. We are afraid to get in trouble. We're afraid to get sued. We're afraid to do certain things where we hesitate in simple decisions that are made to potentially save a life or to make the community safer. So again, there's so many different examples of that, but we know that that's an issue, and we know that it comes down to what makes us good at what we do, everybody. It comes down to competence. And how do we get competence? From training, from perspectives, from learning in events like this, from certificates and education, right? From experience, from previous jobs and careers. All that comes together to make someone competent. So, to take a course and say that you know everything and you can make a confident decision is not the case. You have to offer a perspective. You have to bring in experience. You need to do other things that will allow you to have the confidence and capability to know the decision you're making is potentially the right one. What's Sven say there?
Excellent.
Yeah, this is good. Again, any questions tonight, everybody, as we finish up? I know it's about 10 after. If anybody wants a copy of this recording, Tom will put that up on our Fire Mitigation Alliance group website. Had a good turnout tonight. Had 32 participants, so super excited. I think we had 35 at one point. Any questions as we finish up? Anthony, how are you, my friend? Can you see us, Anthony, from out west?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
You've been here for a while? Oh, yeah, there's a good discussion and sharing of information. Yeah. Give us a golden nugget before we finish up, brother. What did you find was of value tonight with everybody here in the room?
Just the sharing of experiences. Like you got a bunch of experience in the checklist that you made and stuff like that. Talking about the different mutual aids, making sure that that it's important that you do training together on a consistent basis. You can't do it just one time and forget about it for a couple of years. So yeah, sharing that information, sharing the experiences, and then the discussions between the different organizations definitely all
Avoid
helps.
surprises.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, good stuff. And again, I mean, that's what we try to do here at the Fire Mitigation Alliance, right? We've got Firehouse training, Solve, Fire Rain, and of course, the Amplicam wildfire sensor technology. Well, what we try to do here is just bring value. Again, have these discussions. If you are in the Toronto area and you're interested, please send us an email. Reach out to Tom or myself. You probably got the Zoom link from us for tonight. Join us in Toronto in July. We're gonna have this fire safety night. We'll have some wine and cheese. You'll get a fire safety certificate specific for the workplace, and just get a chance to get to know each other and build these relationships. For those like Suresh and others from across the world, don't worry, Tom will pay for your flight.
That's right, exactly.
No, again, thank you, everybody.
Charge it, yeah.
Please reach out, Justin, Tom, Quincy, myself for any further training or products. And again, thank you all for joining us. We'll hope to see you again in the next couple of months, and we'll come up with another idea to do some group training like this again soon. So thank you so much, everybody.